Hi, good evening. This is the 288th meeting of the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium. This is a weekly lecture series about text and image work, comics, animation, and illustration, and their histories. And we're lucky now the series is funded in part by the Will and Ann Eisner Family Foundation. And our guest tonight is Carlo Quispe, who is a Peruvian-born comic book artist and author. I saw his work first online. These very beautifully very painterly comics. That's what attracted me to them. And his comics include Uranus, that was published by Printed Matter, Hairy Tales, which was also made into an animated short, and Carlito from Paper Rocket Comics, and just published a story called Anita in the new issue of World War III Illustrated. And tonight, Carlo's talk is entitled Picture It. So take it away, Carlo.
Thank you so much, Ben. This is such an honor. I definitely don't feel like I deserve this. And so I just want to thank everybody so much for being here with us and checking out the comics. I'm gonna first give you a little intro about like what I've been doing like as an artist. And then I'm going to show you some comics that I've done since 2016 that deal with the administration, but as you'll see, the focus changes from dealing with the terrible leaders that I was talking about, and it goes to focus more into the queer immigrants that I mentioned in the little write-up about this talk. You'll also see that themes in my comics have to do with immigration and with like war, conflicts, stuff that I think is what people care about. What I see, reflected in the news and reflected in, just like the writing on the wall. When I go outside and I talk to people, this is the stuff I feel is important to me. These are what should be considered mainstream comics because it's what most people are dealing with. But that's just my opinion. Okay. So I'm gonna go to my PowerPoint here. First, I'm gonna share my screen. Hold on. Oh, hold on. Okay. So again, my name is Carlo Quispe and I'm a cartoonist. I'm from Peru originally. This is my, this is the web address for my website. And also that's a QR code. So you can hold up your phone to the screen and it'll take you to my website. Okay. There's some stuff in there that's for sale. There's also some free stuff. So please check it out. Your support means that I get to keep making more comics, okay? This image is from one of the first comics I ever did. It's called the Everything's Okay comic. It's kind of like a post 9/11 comic about, as you can see, people protesting and then getting beat up for it. This is a more cleaned up version that I made for the comic World War III Illustrated. They're a comics collective that has been around since the 80s. That is a venue for political comics. And it's contributors from all over the world, but we edit it here. And as you can see, it's from 2004. This is kind of like, again, like post 9/11 take on things. This also reflects like what I was doing at the time. I was working for an animation company in New York. And the story basically is about how I started as a commercial artist, and then ended up as an independent cartoonist. I also like to make comics about Peru. As you will see, this comic Bésame Mucho is about radical gay and lesbian and transgender activists in Lima, Peru. And they do yearly kiss in front of the Catholic Cathedral to demand equality. And my own book, Uranus, came out in 2010. This is a project that I did with my friend Mike Diana and Shane Oot, and we make adult humor comics. Printed Matter also did me a solid and published this little, what's called an ashcan edition. It's kind of like something that comics in the 90s used to do, a lot of promotional stuff, like a zero issue, which would be like the origin of the character, right? I got to do a zero issue as well for Uranus. And the content is stories of people who are going to get tested at the free STD sites in New York. So it wasn't only a comic, but it was also in a way like a guided tour of all of the free STD sites in every borough. That's why this guy's waiting for his number to be called. And also you'll see underneath the Uranus symbol, you'll see the word SIDA, which is in Spanish, AIDS, and SIDA as two words means you can get it. So this was a reference to, like one of those like awareness ads that's in the clinics, right? Also showing how, I'm making a comic that is also about, Spanish-speaking people. Political Will is a character that I did also for World War III, but this color version was published in 2014 in a book called Queer that was edited by Robert Kirby. And this anthology got the Eisner, the Ignatz Award for Best Anthology for 2014. But this comic also causes me a little bit of pain because the full page, this is just the top half. The bottom half has some adult language, right? And I didn't realize that people would take offense. I guess I was taken aback by people criticizing this comic, and I kind of had to this was the moment where I had to get used to negative criticism. But I also feel like, well, I'll just have to start getting used to this kind of stuff and be tough about it. This comic, it's called Love Me or Leave Me, and I made this in 2005. This was a comic that was kind of an experiment for me. I took the language from a speech that Larry Kramer gave in 2005 called The Tragedy of Gays. And Larry Kramer is an activist for one of the activists of ACT UP. And at the time, he was denouncing not only the war on terror, but also denouncing meth use in the gay community. And I just, it was weird because I actually knew a soldier, ex-military man, who was also addicted to meth. And at the time, he was my roommate. And so when I heard the speech, all of the things that were around me kind of became like one thing, because I think that the military really messed them up, And so there's military in my family as well. And so I kind of felt like I, could do something interesting with these elements and mash them up all together. Eventually this comic, a color version of this comic was published in a book called Alphabet, which is another queer book. And I thought this was good because it's in color, so you can see the color of the people's skin, you know, and so you can see that I'm dealing with like people of color in this comic. Um, uh, okay, Hairy Tales is in Spanish is called Cuentos Peludos, and this is a comic that I made that is all about. I mean, it's a few things all at the same time, because it's not only a hair pride kind of comic, you know, be prideful of your body hair, but it's also a comic that is about STD prevention, because when he goes from being a boy to a man to a wolf, right? But he doesn't forget to bring his rubbers, you know, even though he's going on the prowl, right? So in 2018, this comic became an animated short thanks to my friend from Argentina. His name is Pablo Oliverio, and he is also just like a really great artist. And so the reason we met is because I was also volunteering for an organization called Mix NYC, which is an independent queer film festival. And so I got to know a lot of filmmakers and other kinds of artists. I was also working in the Bronx for a nonprofit that is all about performance art, especially focusing on women, queer people, and people of color. And so I was working, helping people make their art, you know, on stage, and also recruiting artists from all over the city. So that was really fun kind of job to have while I was doing all this artwork. So this is the hairy tale that that we were talking about, and now this is the second edition of my collection of comics called Uranus Comics. Hairy Tales is one of the comics included in here, and as you can see next to it is a comic by Mag Diana. You can find all of these links to all this stuff in my website. And a really fun comic strip is called Dog Boy. This is an example of my all ages work. I mean, I won't be going into this too much, but I just want to point out how I'm not only trying to make something that is like Brooklyn Pride, and also just like showing normal people, normal streets, scenes. This is like I love drawing architecture. So this was a way to make a comic strip out of that, honoring Coney Island. And because it's Coney Island, this is a comic that is inspired by the Dog-Faced Man, who was one of the people from the Freak Show from back then. But this is like a reimagined version of that character, and he's more like a Brooklyn kind of guy who dresses in a suit and takes photos. And this is actually inspired by a friend of mine who's a photographer who lives in Brooklyn. And then another thing about this comic is that there are gay references in this comic that are not so obvious. You might see in the center panel, he is taking a picture of a couple of guys, and he goes woof to them as a dog would. And so this is kind of like a gay reference to gay guys who pretend to be dogs, and they this is like their thing. So Dog Boy is kind of like it's kind of referencing that, but in a subtle way. And another kind of gay take on popular culture is my comic Uranus Attacks, which is inspired, of course, by Mars Attacks, which is in turn inspired by War of the Worlds. And this was a comic that I did in 2019, just because I was feeling all of this angst and fear of like immigrants. Trump was talking about the caravan, and people were like, you know, showing it on TV as though it was like a zombie apocalypse. And so I said, well, what if the aliens were from Uranus, and they were gay, and they were pink and glittery, and they came in a limited edition, and they were only $10. And so I also had like a small exhibit where I was able to show this this comic along with the creatures. So I kind of wanted to make something that was more fun than just the comic. You know, I kind of wanted to make a toy also. You know, it's kind of the stuff that I am into. I'm into comics and popular culture and toys and movies and cartoons and all that stuff. So it's what I want to make as well. These photos were taken by my Bronx friend, photographer, Stefan Antonio. He had this large photography canvas, photography backdrop that I was able to just fill in with drawings of my Puerto Rican friend, who is also a filmmaker and a great artist himself. His name is Cristobal. Yeah, and so that ends the intro. I'm gonna now talk about the comics that I've been doing that have been published in World War III Illustrated. I'm interested in this block of comics, not only because they are all ages work, but also because now World War III Illustrated is an imprint of AK Press. And so we're really happy to be, you know, having this extra support for World War III. And I'm just gonna just let you check out the what it says here. I don't know if you can see it all there. Since its founding in 1979 by Seth Tobachman and Peter Cooper, World War III Illustrated has been publishing cutting-edge political comics that have inspired the developing popularity and recognition of comics as a respected art form. So yeah, I'm really proud to be part of World War III. This comic is from the anthology called Fight Fascism. And the idea here is to, again, is focusing on aliens, right? Super Manuel is from Krypton. He speaks he speaks fluent Spanish. And he came, you know, to Earth to rescue us, right? And so, as you can see, this image is inspired by the Jack Kirby drawing of Captain America punching Hitler. And this time, it's Trump. And then next, you can see his the Comics Code Authority here. It's actually turned into the anarchist symbol. I like putting, I guess, comic book references, not just gay references to things. But this comic book reference has to do with the Comics Code Authority and like the censorship of comics that ended up in Senate hearing where EC Comics and the horror comics, horror genre, crime comics, they were all put under the they were all questioned, you know, and ended up, the comic book industry ended up with the Comics Code Authority, which is kind of like a self-censorship mechanism that lasted until like 2010 or 11. Okay. I just want to point out here that the ICE agent is shooting at Super Manuel, but Super Manuel is bulletproof. And so his butt's bulletproof. I was making this comic without looking at any reference. It was all just out of my head. During the it's called the book fair where we sell a lot of our comics, where we sell a lot of the World War III books, is the Printed Matter Art Book Fair. And we love going there because they also let us, you know, use the wall behind us, and we can have like drawings and stuff. And I, at the time when I was at the book fair, I was actually making the comic at the book fair as like a live drawing, you know, event where I was like, you know, selling the comics, but also drawing comics at the table, right? As like a feature. So people would come and check out what we were selling, right? And eventually I colored it because I wanted to show that Super Manuel is brown. There's an issue, I think, with comics that unless it's stated, like obviously stated, a lot of people think that the character is white, just because, like, or why is that? You know, shouldn't we question why that happens? So when I got the chance to color Super Manuel, I was like, oh, great, because then I can show that he's brown, right? And also that Trump is orange, which is kind of funny. And so my idea here was that, and oh, by the way, this comic was made in 2016, after he became the nominee, but before he became president. And my feeling was that he was going to win because people in my neighborhood uptown, even though they're Dominican, they're religious, right? And so they were saying how they were going to vote for Trump because, you know, then they can get what they want, which is like, religious-based goals, right? And so I was nervous. And also at the time I was teaching a class to young people, and they were all Latin boys, right? And in this moment, I felt like it was important for me to show them an example of like Superman, right? Like a different story from what Trump was saying we were, right? Because he came and started saying that Mexicans were rapists and criminals. And I knew that my students were hearing this because they were telling me how anxious their parents were, right? And so I knew that they had heard that propaganda, right? And so I had to make something that was against that narrative, right? And so that's why Super Manuel became a character. You know, also I was telling them, make a character based upon, I would tell my students, make a character based upon yourself. And so you see, I am, if I tie my hair back, I am Super Manuel, right? And like my hair gets all messed up when he starts smashing me up, right? The other thing that I learned about making a comic like this, I mean, I made this comic for like, I guess, like I said, I make these for like a variety of reasons. I had always made adult work for my gay community. And this was the time where I was making something that was more for general audiences, right? Everybody would be reading this, my students, my family, my nephew. And then eventually people at World War III included the comic because it fit in with the fight fascism idea, right? But I was doing this for my neighbors to show them that, who's the real enemy here, right? And I also wanted to have some fun at the expense of the white supremacists, right? So in this instance, even though their chants also traumatize me, right? And it should upset anybody who's against what they think. This is, who we have to deal with now that Trump is gone. His followers are still around, and they feel the same way still. And so we kind of have to, my take on it is that they have to be like rescued, right? Like when you rescue somebody from a gang or when you rescue somebody from a cult, right? They've been brainwashed, right? So we have to help them and like put some soap in their ears and like wash that stuff out, right? So that's how I felt. Super Manuel was there to rescue them, right? He says, I've got to help. I hope I can make a difference, right? And so even though like Trump is going through his list of evil things, the idea here is that there is this fighting spirit that is inside of us that can take a beating and can take all the punches, right? That can take all of that like trauma, but still remain alive, right? That's Super Manuel for me is kind of like the person inside who is gonna win at the end, right? And so at the end of the comic, we find out that the whole reason why he's like a giant monster is because he has an evil amulet, right? Or his family heirloom that he says. And then he goes, "Oh, I'm shrinking," right? And it was so satisfying to hear, you know, how the newscasters were saying that his lead was shrinking, right? That he, you know, it was more and more difficult for him to become the winner, right? And so it kind of like made me feel like, you know, I had hoped that he somehow would become small and then easy to handle, right? Because the next step for him is to face justice, right? This is another reference to the World War II era. The Axis powers would be the ones who would put their heads through the holes, and then Americans would throw the baseballs at their heads. And the original comic would say, "Knock out the enemy with bonds," right? So this is like how they would advertise and sell bonds in World War II. And I feel like, you know, I guess from Mel Brooks, you know, Mel Brooks, he's done, you know, so many comedies dealing with World War II, and his take on things is to humiliate and make fun of the Nazis, right? That's his way of dealing with it, is to make fun of them, right, and make them like, you know, shame them, right? So again, this is the web address for Fight Fascism. The next comic I'll be talking about is the comic about Fujimori, which is the other terrible leader that I wanted to talk about. When I started seeing how Trump was going about his business, it started making me think about Peru and the reason why our family left. And it was because the government was corrupt and we were in danger. So this comic was made to kind of warn the readers of what could happen here, because it had happened in my country. And yeah, this also was a project that I did with my dad, because the other thing that was happening while Trump was in office is that I felt like he was destabilizing everything and everyone. I felt like I had to kind of stabilize myself before I could deal with what was happening. And part of that had to do with making up with my dad, because we had always had conflicts. He was always more conservative, and he also became a diabetic. And also, like, a lot of my friends' parents started to die. And so I felt this can be a project that not only will help me, you know, tell the story about Peru, but this will also help me come together with my dad, so that we can, you know, just relate as adults. And also, so I wouldn't have any like my anti-authoritarian issues are all wrapped up with my dad. And so I felt like I wasn't able to see things clearly until I dealt with those issues, right? Also, I got married. I like moved to Brooklyn. Like, a lot of things happened while this was happening. So I feel like it was important for me to kind of like be stable and be happy as well. Connect with my family. That's what became important at this time, where everything was being destabilized, right? So the comic that I've made here is using photo reference. Like I said, the previous comic, I had just done everything out of my head. I just drew what I imagined. But this comic, I felt it had to have real likenesses, right? And I wanted to use photo reference because Fujimori is of Japanese descent. And how should I put this? In Peru, the political comics, the political cartoons are very, very mean-spirited and made all of the politicians just look really ugly. And I had to be careful because I didn't, even though at first what I wanted to do was reference those political cartoons, I really, once I started doing it, it basically perpetuated the negative stereotypes that I was like, and all my life I've tried to fight against, right? So this was kind of a challenging kind of comic to make. But what I focus on mostly is the similarities that a politician like Fujimori has with Trump, not only in the corruption, but also in how he has placed his own daughter in a strategic position. When Fujimori was criticized by his wife, he divorced her and made his daughter the first lady, right? And so I felt like this is Ivanka, like written all over it, you know? And so we have to connect these two stories. Also, like I'm saying, I was really focused on family at this time. And so to do a story about Fujimori's family, in a way felt like I was not only criticizing like Peru, which I love, you know, you know, you kind of have to love a place before you hate it. But I wanted to show people where I come from, you know, like, and maybe to show them that it's also not so different from where you come from, right? Let's demystify that a little bit, right? I wanted to show also in Peru, there's Japanese people, there's Israeli-born people, there's Black people. I think you can see in the top right box there, I think I can point it out with this here. You can see the name Maria Elena Madre Coraje, right? This is a reference to an Afro-Peruvian activist that was murdered around this time or before this time. But people remember her as like an example of a woman who organized poor people, and she died for it, right? So she's kind of a hero, and they made a movie about her. The movie's name is Coraje. You can, I'll tell you about it again, so don't worry about that. But it's an excellent movie. Movies from Peru are crazy because sometimes they deal with like the abject poverty, so it can be really, really hard to watch. It can be very traumatic. And another traumatic thing that Fujimori was responsible for was sterilization of indigenous women, which also I've read stories about women in confinement now, in ICE jails, also having to go through sterilizations. And so this is yet another thing that repeated itself, right? This is, hold on. This panel here on the bottom right is from the UN Secretary General, Pérez de Cuellar, who's talking about the situation in Peru. And he says something that I kind of felt, you know, was happening in the US, that that it was no longer a democracy, that we were a country headed by an authoritarian regime. So I felt like it was okay to talk about Peru, but seeing, you know, if people would understand that it was also an analogy to what was going on in the US. This deals with terrorists taking over the Japanese embassy, and then the military killing them. And then in this page, finally, Fujimori is exposed. He was secretly videotaped by his enemies, and then he flew away to Japan so he could escape justice. But eventually he tried to come back to Peru in 2007 and was through Chile and was arrested, right? In the bottom right there, you can see an image of his daughter, Keiko Fujimori, and her brother, Kenji Fujimori. And they were starting to become, they took over their father's right-wing party. And in the bottom right there, you can see Rudolph Giuliani went to Peru because he was doing an international tour because he was a terrorism expert. And so he went down there, and so she wanted to be taking a photo with him so she could use it to run for office, right? But she lost her run, but her brother got into the Congress. And then the next thing you know, Fujimori was let out of jail because he was, they were saying that he was just like a sick old man. But what had happened was that Kenji Fujimori sold his vote to not impeach that president at the time. So he would let his father out. But again, they were secretly taped, and those tapes were exposed, and he ended up going to jail. But the rumor is that it's the daughter, that she is the one who released the tapes. So she would be the one to run for president in 2021. But then it was discovered that she had committed crimes during her fundraising. And so she is in jail right now. So all of them ended up in jail. And because they know her family history, they didn't allow her to leave jail while waiting for the trial because they know that her family is like a flight risk. And so, you know, to me, this was a happy ending because it told me that justice would prevail eventually, right? And now we know that if Trump leaves office, he might get indicted for all the crimes that he did. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to that happening. I think what we have to focus on now is outliving all of this. You know, so please be safe and wear your mask and don't get COVID, so we can outlive Trump. Okay. The next comic I want to talk about is called Carlito, and it expands on my stories about Peru. This comic was done a couple of times. The original version, which you see here, was made for the Radical Fairy Digest, which is a queer publication that has been going on a long time. And my friends are there, and they were making a comic that is called I'm Migration, and it was about what was happening at the time in terms of like you know, immigrants being attacked. I'm sorry, there's somebody's raising their hand.
No, I accidentally pressed
it. Okay, so we'll continue. Yeah. The other thing that was happening was the news about the kids in the cages, which I really didn't know how to react because I felt like it was such a violent act. I really couldn't believe that was happening and that people were okay with it. And I knew that the problem was bigger than just that caravan or this moment, right? It's like a general attitude that I've seen in the US ever since I got here in the 90s, and a similar attitude that I felt in Spain when I was there in the 80s, right? Of people telling you to go back to your country, right? To go back where you come from, right? For whatever reason. I don't think like that. So I can't really spend too much time thinking why they think like that. It just hurts, you know? And so I had never really wanted to make a comic about these experiences because they're traumatic. But I felt like nobody knows. Nobody knows how I feel. You know, nobody knows what's in my heart. Nobody knows how I feel when they say that, right? So what if I told them? You know, what if I told them how it feels so that they would know at least, right? So they would know what they're doing, right? Sorry. And so I made this comic for my friends from RFD, and it was beautiful. All of the stories around it were beautiful too. And I posted this online, and a wonderful person from Paper Rocket Mini Comics said, why don't we put this out and publish this as a mini book, take each panel and make a page out of it, right? So it became like a mini book that's like 50 pages, which again, you can find links on my website. But the story here is, it is based on my life, based on the experiences that I had. I would say loosely based, because I really kind of had to like make it snappy and kind of make it like a quick read, right? My idea was that if I'm going to be in the head of this kid, like I want to make each panel be self-contained, so that each panel seems like a separate thought that he's having, kind of like this is how a kid would tell the story, right? Of where he comes from, where he's going. He talks about the kids in his school. He talks about his dog, talking about learning how he likes some boys and also some girls. This is, my queer experience kind of began as bisexual. But again, this is an all ages take on that experience, right? So in the top left, you see it's just darkness, but they're actually having a kissing moment, right? Which you should imagine in your head. Yeah, this was an interesting experience, because it kind of like let a lot of feelings out that I had, that I really didn't even realize I was thinking about. Not just like telling the story of me and my sister, or me and my dad, or like me and my schoolmates. These were all just memories that I had that I really hadn't thought about too much, either because they're traumatic experiences, or just because it's just easier not to think about them. You know, when I think about having to do a drawing of Jesus Christ, I feel like I was lucky that I was like a little kid, like an innocent little kid, not really knowing what it is I was drawing, because it is representative now to me of our colonized mindset, right? Whenever you see artists from South America using religious references, it's to talk about being a colonized people. And at the time, I wasn't making this as a protest. I was doing it like as an earnest expression of myself, of Lima, of Peru, you know. But now that I think about it, you know, and even though I also won that prize, and so the prize was to travel back to Peru. I mean, back to Spain, and not only Spain, but Huelva, where the Pinta Niña and Santa Maria took off from. So, and then my artwork is hanging in the children's museum there, which is all full of drawings from South American kids. It disturbs me a little bit to think about it. After winning that prize, my family traveled to the US, right? And so the idea here of the super perro, that's a super dog, is the dog that I left behind in Peru, traveling all over the world to look for me. That's a comic that I still want to do one day. And so let me see if I can find the previous cartoon here. Because in Spain, they would tell me to go back to China, right? As you can see in the top right. Kids from Spain would tell me to go back to China because my eyes are slanted because I have some indigenous in me. And so, for example, my uncle would call me cat face, which is why like my early comics have a character with a cat face, because I kind of took that to heart, you know? And so in the bottom left there, you see the American kids would tell me to go back to Mexico, right? They're just ignorant because they don't know that I come from Peru, right? So in a way, I felt like, at least I'm not as dumb as they are, you know? That was always my, you know, my solace. Okay. And at the end here, I end with me saying that I feel like I'm a lucky person, right? This was like a special moment for me when I was a kid, when my teacher asked me if I felt like I was lucky. This was doing like this is not like this is not the moment the way it happened in the comic, but the way it happened in real life is that I was going for an entrance exam for a private school in Lima. And my teacher asked me, do you feel like you're lucky? In Peru, the slang is lechero, which is milkman. I don't really know ever. I never really found out why that was the word for lucky. But my teacher said, it is lechero. And I said, see, you know, yeah, I felt like I was lucky. I had just come back from Spain. I was about to go to this awesome school in Lima. I felt like I was lucky. Yeah, but I guess I always think about that, whether I was lucky. You know, I think in comparison to other people, I am lucky, and definitely like my immigration experience in the 90s was a luckier experience than the kids that are, you know, trying to get asylum now, you know. So I kind of had to always think about that and how fortunate I am. Yeah, and then I've always, you know, made comics that have to do with queer experience, and health is a big concern for all of us, not just STDs, but also, you know, HIV and AIDS are a big part of like our world, right? And so when I was contacted by Visual Aids to create this all ages comic about getting tested, I felt like I could, you know, maybe say something that would be helpful, you know, that would actually make people want to read the comic, right?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know who that is, but can you mute yourself, please? Okay. Okay, can you hear me again? Okay. So Paco's at a party, and it's the best party in the world. It's the most amazing party. It's a New Year's party, and it's definitely inspired by the amazing parties that my friends throw. I'm talking about the people at the Mix NYC festivals. They really knew how to celebrate. And the comic is about Paco, who is afraid to get tested, right? And so he is encouraged by his friends to go through with it. And they're having a party that is not just to have fun, but also to get tested. And at the end, Paco has a conversation with his friends. This is kind of based on conversations that I've heard people have, that they've had with me when they talk about disclosing their status, right, as HIV positive. People talking about their medication, PrEP. This is just something that is casual in queer environment. And people not only talk about this to inform each other, but they also flirt while they talk about these serious subjects, right? I grew up Catholic, and so to me, it's funny to have a party where everybody's dressed up like a demon, and that they're in hell, and that they're having fun in hell, right? They're not afraid of where they're going, you know. Okay, and so let's see. I'm just setting up this viewer here. Okay, and so this is the moment where finally Paco's gonna go to the clinic with his friend, right? And so I thought it was interesting too how I was making this comic while the COVID pandemic was just starting. And so I'm glad that I was, just working in my studio at home on this while that was happening, because I could just, stay home and focus on work. And I even, because of this was made for an exhibit that was going to happen, but then it got postponed. And so I ended up having even more time to work on this. And I was able to not just color it, but also give it a little shadow and like make it a little bit prettier. I was thinking about, how can I make a comic that is about getting tested for HIV, but how can I make it so that it's also about so it's more than just that, I wanted to make something that was better than more interesting than the get tested comics that I had read when I was growing up. They were like scary and almost like moralizing. And I wanted to make a comic that was more based on like my experience of getting tested, more like a moment that is a moment of growth, it's a rite of passage, right? What I was intending here is for Paco to grow up a little bit at the end of this comic, for him to get over the fear. It was what I wanted to like focus on. The character gets to have a conversation here with his doctor, right? And so he gets his results and he's negative. And so he realizes that what he's actually afraid of is the stigma that comes with HIV and AIDS. And like he says, what would my family think? What would my friends say? Would anybody love me? And I kind of wanted to be, honest about how, honest about what is it that it's keeping me, what's making me afraid, you know, ultimately, it's very personal, kind of fear, because it has to do with who supports him, who would love him, right? Um, and then the comic goes on to discuss safe sex and how everybody, um, you know, everybody catches something sometime. That, you know, it could be a little bit more relaxed feeling about safe sex. Um, that's why they have PrEP and other forms of preventive measures, so that people can experience sexual fulfillment. This is like another idea that I wanted to come, you know, I wanted to come across my comics, is that people of color, we're not only thinking about how to fight against white supremacy. We want, you know, to have happiness and find love. You know, that's also why in my comics I focus so much on relationships and family, because I want this also to be useful for people to know how to relate to each other and how to love each other. Political Will, the character that I spoke about before, he's always meeting people at rallies and at protests. Isn't that the best place to find, you know, someone like-minded, you know? So I wanted to make, you know, the comic for World War III that's all about like activism and politics, to make a comic that is also about relationships, and how do we apply those politics to our relationships, to our, you know, our love life, you know? If you're a feminist, you know, what kind of man are you gonna go with, you know? Or if you're hetero, right? And so I always feel like that's kind of left out from the conversation about politics and radical changes. You know, are we talking about, you know, the world, physical world, or also the way that we interact? You know, are we making progress that way? You know, and I think that for gay men, I feel like we're still very much, you know, kind of isolated from each other and expected to act in certain ways that that maybe, you know, maybe we can be a little bit softer, maybe we can be a little bit sweeter. You know, what if we were a little bit more open with our feelings, right? A little bit more flexible, you know, in our, you know, with ourselves, right? So at the end, you know, Paco has to get tested again. And so he's, you know, dealing with that and thanking his friend. Sometimes you'll see in my comics that people will be smoking cigarettes, or in this case, they're eating a hamburger. I kind of wanted to point out that even though some people are, you know, not everybody's perfect, you know, and so I think that's also important to be able to have that kind of imperfection is relatable, I think, because a lot of these comics, you know, want to be like very idealized versions of what queer people should be or something. My comics are full of people with like bad personalities and like um, um, they're flawed. They're flawed, but hopefully at the end of each comic they grow up a little bit. They find a little bit of happiness, right? Okay, and so now we're coming to the last comic. It's called an Anita, and it's in the new World War III anthology called The World We Are Fighting For. I'm really happy about this comic, not only because I get to honor my mom, who is also, I know she's a frustrated artist. I know that that I'm only an artist because she kind of made me. She passed down her desire to be an artist to me. And so I kind of feel like I owe it to her to do this and to make her proud, and also to make good art, to make something that people will like, you know, something, make something that is beautiful. And also, this was inspired by the previous issue of World War III, which was called, which was a feminist issue. Um, and I see Jessica down there. Jessica, you were part of that comic, which was an excellent comic. And I just felt like we kind of had to keep the spirit of that going. And for me, it was a challenge, because I've done characters, you know, based on my woman friends before, but I hadn't really done like a story that was like this, you know, that was trying to create a comedic kind of character, a funny kind of character. The idea here was that Anita is going back to school, right? And so I immediately thought of that movie, that Rodney Dangerfield movie, Back to School, where he goes back to college as an older man and offends everybody, and it's really, you know, kind of hysterical. And at the end, he like falls in love with one of the instructors there, and is able to graduate and like you know, focus on his studies and stuff. And so I was thinking also at this time, immigrants are being thought of as the enemy. What if I could make a character that would challenge that? You know, what if I made a character that was like good for this country? You know, like what if she was something that that, you know, what if people could root for her? You know, what if I could make a comic that would challenge that? So I also know that people who are on the far right, I think that their nightmare is an immigrant succeeding in the society. And so I felt like this could work in multiple ways. Not only am I honoring Anna, I'm also making a comic that is, I know it's gonna make the Proud Boys angry, right? Because this is what their nightmare is, for an immigrant to succeed, right? And not only is she succeeding, I'm also succeeding, right? So it felt good to put this out there, but also because it has a happy ending, like on its own, you know. And it's also, I think it's kind of cute. I think it makes her into a kind of like an adorable kind of character. And I'm still on this page because I want you to look at the beginning of the comic, because when I was reading it yesterday to prepare for this, I didn't realize how much feeling I'm putting into the comic. When I hear myself reading the dialogue, and she's saying, "I work to take care of my family," it really kind of got me, because it's what I think makes her heroic. You know, it's like the working class hero kind of person. You know, and she's helpful. You know, I'll help you find services you need, provide you with important information. That is cool. You know, that's what makes her cool, okay? And so as you can see, she's driving a car and she's smoking. So you can tell she's not perfect, right? She's no better than anybody else, right? She still has flaws, but she's working on it, right? And also, I think in real life, my mom stopped smoking, and so I really hope that that's the case, because we don't need that, okay? So she says they have a master's. How hard can it be, right? She knows she can do it. And the funny part here is how like nervous she is. She's so scared. Even like the dialogue is getting smaller and smaller as she's talking, right? Because she's terrified of speaking in public. You know, she has like a heavy accent, right? Even heavier than mine. And so they say, Ana, you are a professional. You have to be able to speak in public, okay? Okay. And so she explains, I get very nervous. And her classmates say, oh, don't feel that way. It's us. We're your classmates. Just talk to us. You're doing fine. You know, they were there for her, you know. And I made this interviewing her. She told me these are like the important parts that she remembers, right? And I just think it's so sweet because I think in a comic in this time, you would expect something's gonna be messed up here. Either she's gonna have to go through some kind of Me Too movement, or she's going to, you know, have to like get away from the cops or whatever. But that never happens. Nothing bad happens to her. She succeeds, right? This moment I thought was really funny because it really has to do, you really have to read this as an American first. You have to see, she says, sorry, I'm late, Professor Angel. And he says, Angel? I'm no angel. Hell. Remember hell. Angel. My name is Angel. Angel. And she says, okay, okay. And it's something that happens a lot, I think, with strange names. You know, people don't know how to pronounce them, you know, and all my life I've had to deal with this, right? And so for a long time, I only wrote my first name as a signature, like Carlo apostrophe S, kind of like McDonald's, you know, just because I didn't want to write my last name. I didn't want to hear somebody mispronounce my last name, so I wouldn't even put it there. And so also I've had like pseudonyms, like I wasn't always going by Carlo. I've also gone under the name Uranus as my nickname. That's also why my comic is called Uranus. But that's another reason. That's for another reason, because sometimes I get tired of people asking me where I come from. You know, oh, you look different. Where are you from? And so at first, my nickname was just Lima, Peru. That was my nickname, you know, as if I was in the army. You just know me by the city where I come from, right? But then I said, well, what if I came from outer space? That would be way funnier. So I started sometimes introducing myself as Uranus, right? As also as like a double entendre, because I love butt jokes, okay? Okay, so that was just like a little pause about names and name pronunciation, okay? So she says, oh no, she's worried that she's gonna have to speak in public for her presentation. They're all oral presentations, right? And they're about Long Island gangs. And this happened in real life. This is in some way to bring in like current events into the story. This is actually who she is helping. She is helping people in that situation who are in danger, right? So she's like, what do I know about Long Island gangs? What are we gonna do? And then she's in her office helping a student out who is saying, odio ir a clase, no me respetan los otros, which means I hate going to class. No one else respects me. And she says, I understand. I think that all immigrants at one point have that kind of chip on the shoulder, right? That people don't respect them. So the boss says, we're having a visit from the county. They're giving a half-hour presentation on local gangs. Lucky her, right? So she says, I want a copy of the PowerPoint. And then she practices in a loud voice down in the bottom panel there. It's her final exam day. And I thought that it was more important to get to the point where she actually gets the applause. You know, I understand that she did a great job. She says, I was informative, I was helpful, I was confident, I was proud. And there she gets the applause, right? And the graduation, we get to see her entire family. And there's an actual moment of happiness and pride. Because we can have those moments too. It's not just all traumatic. Sometimes we can have moments of happiness as well. Yay, Anita, we reached our goal. You helped me overcome my fears and insecurity. Gracias, which means thank you. I'm so grateful for the support people around me that helped me reach my goal. And I also want to say, for me, I want to thank all of you who are watching, and Ben, this is a really nice thing you did. I really appreciate it. And I feel like everybody who's here has helped me in some way. So I want to thank you. I appreciate it. I couldn't be here without you. And also my husband, Mark, who I call Flash. Thank you. And at the end here, I wanted to point out how important education is. I'm a teacher as well. I do workshops. I used to teach middle school. I work for different organizations. One of them is called Free Arts New York, and I do workshops for them. And I think in the future, you know, I'm gonna also try to do more locally here in my neighborhood in Brooklyn. Okay. Anita says, education is the best investment you can make, Will. Working hard is the way to get what you want. And another thing that I'll give away about this comic is that just like in my real life, I'm so into my family, my comic book characters are also related. And so you've heard me mention political will before. Anna is the mother of political will. That's why she's saying at the end, education is the best investment you can make, Will. And so something that I do with the political will comics is that every time there's one of his comics, you get to discover a different part about him. In the beginning, he was just like an activist. In the second comic, he reveals he's actually Peruvian, and he gets to meet like Mexican activists. And then in the next comic, he's dating a guy, so you realize that he's also queer. And then they go to a protest where they have to get naked, right? And so the idea here is that we're revealing a little bit of how my characters are interconnected as well, and also why are these characters why do they exist? I mean, they're based on my life. They're like an autobiographical exercise. You know, if I'm making a comic about my country, it is an autobiographical comic. Even if I wasn't in the comic about my president went to jail, it is a comic that is about Peru, which is where I come from. And so, and then Carlito is a story about how I came to this country, but from the perspective of a kid. Like when I was a kid, I didn't know all of that political stuff was going on. We only found out about that. We only found out about that later on. And so it was interesting for me to kind of put all of these comics together because they kind of tell like a larger story of my family immigrating here, of why my country was all messed up, why I am so against terrible leaders, why I want to fight them. It's all kind of related in this, in this group of comics that I've made for World War III. So it's like also changing the focus from only thinking about the enemy and only thinking about the president to then also focusing on my own immigration experience and also what it's like for other immigrants here who are trying to make a better life, for themselves and create opportunities for ourselves, all of that, in a way told underneath the stories about my family or me or my presidents, So yeah, again, you can find more on my website. The QR code will take you there. If you want to just use your phone, it will take you to that website. Cool.
Thank you.
So
we have a couple of questions already. Peter
okay.
Kramer, I have to unmute you.
Okay.
Hey, Carlo.
Hi.
That was so wonderful, so personal and political. I'm sitting next to Jack's machine, so.
Okay.
We're side by side watching your broadcast.
Cool.
My questions were, where were you getting your early AIDS info pamphlets? And please tell us about Astro Boy.
Oh, hold on a moment. I have to stop sharing my screen. Okay. So when I first made, are you referring to the comic I made, Love Me or Leave Me, that was about Larry Kramer? Are you referring to that work or to other stuff? You still there, Peter?
Right, yes.
Okay.
Unmutability of Zoom.
Okay.
Well, I was talking, when you were talking about the comics that you wanted to make that were giving out, information around AIDS,
okay.
HIV. You mentioned
Yeah.
seeing other pamphlets, right. And I was just curious as to where you were getting that kind of
Well, I was getting them like where I would go get tested, but I'm also referring to stuff that was like in the subways. There were subway ads that had they were based on like soap operas. I don't know if you remember these, but they were so cheesy. And they were also, I think, they weren't queer at all. So it just felt, I don't know, they just felt strange. But a book that really influenced me early on was The Joy of Gay Sex. The Joy of Gay Sex was a really kind of like old-fashioned how-to manual. And my favorite part was that it was illustrated. And it was illustrated with characters from all backgrounds, all shapes and sizes, all getting it on together in the hottest way. But my favorite part of Joy of Gay Sex was the butt section, of course. and they would talk about how to, do it for the first time. And so I made a comic, like one of my earliest comics. I actually did it while I was working at the ink tank for Arrow Blackman. I would have to sneak over to the copy machine and, run like 50 copies really quickly before anybody found out. And then I would go, to I don't know, Folsom Fair or whatever gay gathering, and I would sell the comics. But I made one of my first comics about that was based on the Joy of Gay Sex section of the Butt, and it was all about tenderness and trust. And so kind of kept it to that, and that's how I was able to make that comic fun.
There's a question from Matt L.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
Going. I was actually wondering, I don't think I've seen your work digitally before, and it really like pops. It's sort of interesting that I don't know exactly why, but like the gray tones, but also the black and the white. It has this sort of thing, and I normally hate digital comics sort of as a philosophy, and love print. But have you considered doing some sort of, like later on, a year after something comes out, trying to find some way to get things circulating more digitally other than just flipping pages on the website, like some sort of, I don't know.
Well, I really want to get into making digital comics for sure. I think that's like the way of the future. Even in my website, there's links to at least 6 web comics, and so you can check out, what I've been trying digitally that way. But I think maybe in the future, you know what I've been thinking about is maybe already out there, but I just love stuff that's made on VR, for virtual reality. My favorite artist that's working on that right now his name is Jacoby Satterwhite. He's an amazing artist who's really pioneering virtual reality. But what if you could like put on some goggles, right? And they would just change everything to like a artistic style that you want. Like, what if you could make it all look like Picasso, or make it all look like Norman Rockwell, right? What if they could do something where like everything that you're seeing, gets like copied or translated or something? Like they already have something like that with like the phones where you can take a picture and it translates it into a illustration, right? So what if we could translate that to like virtual reality, but then you could take like Ben Catcher's style, right? And then make everything look like that, right? What if we could make the street and the people look like they've been drawn by an artist, right? I think that would be incredible. I mean, I'm sure they're already working on that, because like an artist like Kaws, Kaws, he's already making like sculptures that you can see by putting on the goggles, and then the sculpture will show up right there, right? Like, I think that's just like amazing. And I'm having a lot of fun with the VR, the VR elements in Pokemon. Okay, like for me, I never thought I would be into a game like Pokemon. I thought I was just too old. Okay, but I think that the cuteness actually helps me with my anxiety, and just like pets kind of help you. A game like Pokemon actually helped me. It's counts your steps. So it's really an exercise app. So it makes me go outside. It gets me connected to my neighborhood. I've actually met a lot of friends that way. And it's kind of like having a sports team. Like it's kind of like having a bowling league where we can have like stuff in common, and no matter where we come from. That's another thing that I always felt that was important about comics and cartoonists, is that we have some sort of bond. I feel like it's not just a professional thing. I think that we like want comics to be in the world, and so I think that we're just going to love like whoever's making comics. And so I feel like that's another thing that that really helped me in my life to make friends through making artwork. I've known the people from World War III Illustrated for almost 20 years now. And even though our relationship is professional, we're also friends. And we're honest with each other, you know, when I'm making a mistake or when something is not cool enough, you know, there's always, you know, I'm always going to have my backup there to help me with that. So I really appreciate that. And for art students or young people that are watching this, I think what's most important is to make friends and to also know how to make friends when you are an adult. I think that's totally essential, because it's not only going to help you in your inspiration, it's also going to help you like get jobs and get gigs and meet people. You will meet your lover through your friend. You know, it's important to be able to, as an artist, have like a well-rounded life where you can have partying and friendships and also, you know, your artistic practice and everything, but it all kind of has to you know, go together. You know, it's just more fun that way. And I guess when I say that, I'm thinking about my friends from the Mix Festival. The director of the Mix Festival at the time when I was there was Stephen Kent-Jusic, SKJ, helped introduce me to a lot of the people that I know in New York City. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think that I would know any of you at all. I definitely met my partner through the Mix Festival. So again, like I'm saying, it's essential if you want to find love and fulfillment to just have as many friends as you possibly can, you know. And also I was able to make peace with my family, and that was really important to me because I need their support. And as a queer person, as a gay man, I think it's so difficult to just count on that. I think you really have to work hard to make those relationships work, you know? I could just go on and on.
Another question from Jack Waters. Mute him.
Hey, Jack.
Hola, Carlito.
Hey, Jack. I've been thinking
Hola.
about you so much. I've been thinking about you so much.
Qué inteligente tú eras. Y guapo también.
Sí, me encanta tu español.
Sí, sí, hoy. Solo hoy. Pero una pregunta para ti. ¿Qué piensas de la relación entre el SIDA y COVID? ¿Qué piensas de la relación?
Yeah, well, Jack is asking me about the relationships between HIV and AIDS and COVID. And I just think it's so strange how a lot of the language that we've been using for HIV and AIDS is now being adopted by everybody now. And the idea of getting tested is so, it's so popular right now, you know? But also at the same time, there is the fear of like what a positive result means, right? Because it could affect your job, right? It could affect, you know, whether you get to, you know, hook up with that, whoever you hooked up with again, right? And it might even affect your living situation, right? There's people who may be living with roommates or whatever, and if they get COVID, maybe they have to move out, right? I feel like a lot of like talk about housing and healthcare are kind of the things that are kind of related to HIV and AIDS. And not only that, but also like stigma and shame, right? But also pride, right? And talking about your status, right? Because we've seen not only the president get it and have to talk about it, but also other people in the media, like Cuomo's brother or whatever, also got it. And, you know, a conversation with his doctor, Fauci, was on TV for everybody to see. And so I think that also the way that we are trying to coax people into wearing a mask is similar to how we have to put social pressure on people to wear condoms, right? And also how masks have been politicized is very related, I think, to how HIV and AIDS is politicized. Who is a radical suddenly for having an illness? You know, also, I think who is in leadership. It's another another thing that can be related between COVID and HIV, because now we have the Trump, but before we had Reagan, right? Who did nothing, you know, who was also like, checked out, right? And so it is people that have to organize and look out for themselves, right? So this is yet another thing that we have in common with that, with COVID is related to HIV and AIDS. People themselves have had to organize and protect themselves, right? I mean, and also, you know, who's been most affected? You know, people of color, poor people, right? Which is another thing that can be related to HIV and AIDS, which is why it's so important, I think, for us to still be talking about it, right, Jack? We got to talk about it. Hay que hablarlo, right? Jack works with an organization. Well, he is an organization. He is Allied Productions, and they have an amazing garden called Le Petit Versailles on 2nd and 2nd, or it's 2nd and between B and C, where you can see programming, you know, all summer long. That is, you know, the art of our community. So please support Allied Productions because they support me.
Question from Winston.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, how are you?
I'm all right. I've been checking out some of your artwork on Instagram.
Cool, man.
I like it very much.
Thank you.
Very much. And I'm interested in the World War III. How do you submit your artwork to them? What type of artwork do they like?
Okay. I think that, well, I'll start this way. The magazine is mostly black and white. And so think about that. There is like a portion that is color, but there's a better chance to get in if it's black and white. If it's like short subject, it has a better chance, right?
Okay.
The subjects that we deal with are like current events, but sometimes if a comic it has to be seen, it will be included in some way, you know? I think, well, each issue is also got like a theme, right?
Okay.
And so when we decide that theme, or when the editors decide, then they put a call out, an email to people who are interested in participating. And so if you check out the website, the World War III website, you'll see that there's an email there that you can send your information to. Next time that we have a call out, you'll also get emailed. And so if you're making stuff that's about that, then we want it. If you want to work with someone else or make a new story, let us know. The last couple of issues have been about like the administration in a way. Even the feminist issue was about like feminism now, you know, under Trump.
Mhm.
So, but again, not everything has to deal with, you know, the latest thing on the news. You know, sometimes I'll make a story that even though I'm making it at this moment, I'm making it about some events that took place in 2012 or some events that took place even before, right? Like the comic about Peru was about the 90s, right? So I was able to tie in my own personal history with what the comic topic was about, you know, which was monsters, right? So that's why I picked Fujimori, because he was the monster when I was a little kid. He was the monster, right?
All right.
I'm interested too in like, if people, you know, how long will it take for somebody to do a comic about Trump, right? And what America was put through, right? How he challenged America, right? Who is gonna make that comic? Not me. I am like done with Trump, you know?
Why
Like I
not you
never
make it?
wanna
I
see
would
that.
collaborate with you on that.
Well, if you wanted to, I would sacrifice myself for that. So let's keep talking.
All right, I'd be delighted to do that. I I have some anti-Trump T-shirts on a website called tpublic.com. The first T-shirt is called "Fistful of Treason," and
That's
it's up
right.
there for sale. I did like a series of Facebook memes or mimes or whatever you call it, all about all this administration and how they was trying to suppress evidence that would expose him for what he really is. I kept making all these memes about Steve Bannon, because Steve Bannon was known for distracting people. Every week he would have like this white chalkboard. Okay, let's get them thinking about this.
Right.
To distract for what they were really wanting to do. And
That's
then Trump
right.
would pump up the salary of all his workers more than what they usually get. And people wondering, how come there's no money for healthcare? Because you're taking it. And you're using the money to build a stupid wall. That's why there's no money, you know? And then you want to find other money to campaign and do all these things when you should be using it to make the country better instead of your own personal gain. But the Republicans are known for being selfish and corporate and evil.
I agree. I
I
agree.
think we should do that. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Let's keep talking about that. I want to also give an update about what's happening in Peru, because America wasn't the only one who got a new president.
Uh-oh.
In Peru, they just removed the president who was there for corruption also. And so it was the president that was supposed to be in office right now. His name is Kuczynski. But like I said before, he traded, he sold up, he was being impeached, and he sold his vote to the son of the president who was in jail to get the guy out, right? But then he had to resign. Kuczynski had to resign. And so another person, his vice president, went in. This is stuff that happened after I made the comic. Okay, that's why it's not in there. But the guy who went in there was also corrupt. And so they just took him out. They just impeached the guy that had replaced the guy who was impeached. And so the one who's going to be taking over as president is the president of the Congress, right? But he's only going to be there until 2021 when they do the new election, right? That's when Keiko wanted to run in 2021, but she's, as far as I know, she's still in jail too.
Oh, wow.
But the guy who they just took out, he has popular support. And even though I'm not there, I really can't, vouch for him, but people in the street poor people, queer people who support him say that he was trying to put in measures to prevent more corruption. And that's why they took him out. So I'm not sure really what's going on there. I know that there are people protesting right now in Peru for what's going on. They're just like tired of the corruption, you know?
Wow. Okay.
So everybody's up in arms, as they
You
should
got
be,
that right.
as they should be.
Yes. Right. You can't stand around and not do anything. You have to do something.
Right, right. Actually, there's some people in the audience who are from Peru who know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
right?
I bet they do. First-hand experience.
Yeah.
There's a question from Delphi.
Cool.
Yeah, hey. Oh, it's so good to
Hi.
hear you talk about your art. I love your art, first of all, but it's always nice to hear the backstories and the reasons why you do it. So that was really beautiful.
Thanks.
Whoops. All right.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm
It's
on
okay.
an iPhone, so it's
Must be nice.
yeah, it's annoying. I wanted to know if your mom had seen the Anita and how she responded to that.
Would Anna like to respond? I think she's
Oh,
there.
she's here in the
Yeah. Is it okay? Can we make Anna?
Yeah.
Can she speak?
Sure.
That is the person who is the real life Anita.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Well, hi everybody, and I would like to congratulate Carlo. It was a very nice way to express about your stories. And you know, Anita, it's a very special experience for me. It's I am how can I say it? You were able to portray a heartfelt story into drawings that capture really a vast array of feelings and emotions that I went through. And I guess everybody can relate to that. You know, in the story, for the people that see it, will find Anita reflecting, thinking, being scared, being insecure. And that's a natural thing. And the other thing I will say about this story and the comic, which I have here, obviously, I have make a copy, is those little details that will relate to me, and it was part of everyday's lives of Anita, you know, like the plants in the window, those whatever frames in the desks, the calls to my children, and those are very Anita thing. So for everybody that it's there, it is. I feel very proud of that story. It's a very full of heart story, genuine. And I hope everybody, you know, can have the same fun that I. It's easy to read and very fun to see, and that is what I will say. You know, thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Wow, that was great. It's making me cry.
Thanks. Thank you. Hello.
I also want to thank you for you know, writing your stories about Peru, and seeing ahead of time where we're going. You know, I just said to somebody today, I think you know, 45's kids are gonna try to run for office, and here your cartoon and this story of Peru is saying, yeah, that's exactly what happens in these situations. I think the more the world is open and that we share our stories, we hopefully will learn to keep an eye out before things like this happen again. So
and also like have hope, you know, that things can you know.
Yeah, the jail ending is really great.
Yeah, and now everybody's thinking about, you know, him having, you know, to face justice, because I think he was trying to get reelected so he could run out the clock on the, you know, well, yeah, on the crimes that he made, the statutes of limitation. And so it would have run out like 5 years after. So he wouldn't have been able to get caught. I mean, of course, unless they like seal the indictment and then open it up afterwards, you know, after he leaves office. So either way, I think he was going to get it. And what I've always imagined is that now that he is not in office, he's going to have to leave the country unless he wants to go to jail. And so what I'm thinking is that maybe he'll go to Russia, and then he will become an immigrant. And then he will really know what it's like to not live in your country anymore. I think that is maybe what he needs to learn on his own, because unless it happens to you, it's hard to understand.
True.
So, here's hoping, that he'll get what's coming to him. And another thing too, that I had to learn, I guess, in this, career, I experienced jealousy a lot, and like I get angry at people and whatever. So I can understand, like trolls and haters and all that stuff. But I think ultimately, I had to focus on like my immigration experience or my family or just someone else besides who was in charge. Because even though I feel it's important to knock him down at every turn, I think it's important to resist. I think that a lot of stories went untold and people were forgotten. And maybe that's also what we can do to make things better, to right the wrongs, right? Something that I was thinking about a lot today was Jack, your sister who recently passed away. She's from Philly, and she helped organize the people who voted eventually for Biden. And I feel like everybody was out there celebrating and like getting COVID. But like, what about the people who didn't make it? What about those who, who are not here right now? We have to remember them, and what they did for us, So sometimes when I see all the artists only focusing on Trump, it makes me think, what could this person have done instead of making fun of Trump? What about telling the story of their kid having to go to school on Zoom or something? Like, what about somebody who's in the hospital because of COVID? Or what about somebody who can't get a date because of the situation, right? What about people who are looking for love at this moment, who are isolated in their houses, like as if they were in jail, right? Like, who's gonna tell that story? And isn't that story more interesting than stupid Trump? I mean, yeah. I mean, who's gonna pay for that story? Everybody's only like buying Trump stuff, but I think that we can do better, than just the lowest common denominator. That's what I think.
Anybody, any other questions? Or that was great talk. So
yes.
If not, we can meet again next week. Is a cartoonist from Berlin named Kai Pfeiffer, who does experimental comics and other really interesting cartoons.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying these gatherings that you're having.
Yeah.
I think also there's another group of queer cartoonists. They've been meeting every couple of years. Jen Camper has been organizing that with Justin Hall, and it's called Queers and Comics. And I think it would be interesting for Queers and Comics, maybe instead of meeting every year in person, maybe there could be some sort of, gathering like this, a virtual gathering like this to like present work or something like that. I don't know. Have like
it's a great organizing mechanism.
Keep it going. Because I think that this is the way, to like get together, And also, like, I depend on book fairs, you know, to sell my comics and independent stuff. And so that hasn't happened. And the next book fair that I'm going to be a part of is in February of 2021. So please come back for that. It's hosted under Printed Matter. Also, it's called the Printed Matter Virtual Book Fair. And I'll be letting everybody know about it. But that's my next big thing. I'm going to be part of that. And I guess from this moment on until February, I'm just going to be printing more comics and like making more zines and stuff so that I can have it to sell at the book fair. But if you want to, you can go to my website and check out the stuff I have now to support all of that stuff. So
thank you.
Do that.
Check it all out. Look it up. Thank you. Thank you. And I will see you next time. Take care, Carla.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. See you next week.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thank you so much again to everyone. Just the
You're
best.
welcome.
Thank you. So many people. My mom and dad, my cousin from Peru, Andrew D'Angelo, Sophia, Jack, Winston.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.